Hey guys and gals, Blake Roberts. I'm the Vice President of the British Columbia Football Conference. I am sending this video. This video is to the attention of the Football Conference coaches, directors, etc. I'm sending a different video to the OFC members and to the British Columbia Football Conference members as well. It's regarding my under 20 CGFL concept that you may already be aware of. I discussed it last fall 20 of 18. Just sending this video as a bit of a follow-up to keep pushing this concept that at least gets looked at. I'm trying to form a focus group of people from each conference to dig deep to see if it's something that we should be looking at. You've got the document. If you don't have the document, feel free to call me at 250-212-2888, 250-212-2888, or email me, Blake at 97wayhome.com. That's Blake at 97wayhome.com. I'm setting it from my personal email rather than the conference marketing email. I don't want this to come across as being actively promoted by the BCFC, because at this point it's not. Just put a little bit of context, and this video is probably going to take 15 minutes. Easier to do a video for me than typing, so just bear with me. Hopefully you watch. Put a little bit of context in terms of who I am. I've been involved with the British Columbia Football Conference since about 92, and a little bit in Winnipeg before that. I was involved with the Okanagan Sun for about 26 years before getting involved with the conference. But for much of the time, I watched the CGFL, the conferences, very closely, and I think I'm fairly well in tune with what the nuances are in each conference. Now, if you go back to my document, I think the numbers speak for themselves in terms of why I think we should be looking at this model. Our current model in the Canadian Junior Football League is broken. It's been broken, in my opinion, for about 30 years. When you've got 3% of the teams or 4% of the teams winning the championships, and when the scores are as lopsided as they are, I don't think that's healthy. When we're losing conferences the way we are that are coming back, and you know, the OFC left 3 or 4 years ago, and they came back after 2 years. They left when they did because it was too expensive and they couldn't compete to be in the CGFL. And as I've said to my friends in the OFC, what's changed? Nothing's changed. And my concern is we're going to lose them again. There's some teams in the BCFC that are fragile. There are teams in the BCFC that on occasion, more than occasionally, talk about leaving the CGFL because the dues are so expensive and they don't see any benefit to it. They're not going to win a national championship anyway. And my concern is this league is going to crumble at some point. And things happen quickly. When the OFC happened, it happened quickly. And I think that this is a model that we're going to be looking at anyway, so better to be proactive rather than reactive. So let's talk. I want to talk now to the Prairie Football Conference and talk about you guys and gals. And again, each conference has its own reasons why, in my mind, a 20 and under might work better. A lot of the reasons are the same across the country. But in the case of this Prairie Football Conference, I'm going to ask you to look at the big picture, because I know we all get so wrapped up in looking at our individual teams, because that takes up so much time. And I get it. I'm not criticizing when I say that. But in the PFC, your lottery revenue from the CFL teams is astronomical compared to what the BCFC teams get. I don't know if you know, the BCFC teams share $90,000 from the BC Lions, and we got told a week and a half ago at our AGM that number is probably going to be shrinking. In the OFC, there's nothing from the CFL. They get zero zip zilch, which is a little crazy, and they should be working on that more than they are, perhaps. Now, I know your teams get some big dollars from the CFL teams, but I also know your expenses are higher too. Your travel budgets are higher than some of the teams east of you and west of you. But let's talk about the PFC. and why I think this would be a potentially a good thing for you guys and gals, for the organizations. In the PFC, I know the PFC is, and I don't mean this with any disrespect, but chest pumping that, you know, the PFC is the strongest conference, and it is. But let's be honest, the Saskatoon Hilltops are beating you as much as anybody. They're the amount of championships that the other teams squeak out, with the exception of maybe Regina, who's right there usually, but still losing. But the other teams, you're chasing the Hilltops. It's not competitive. If you look at the scores overall, if you, as an outsider, remove yourselves from the pride of being involved with your team, as an outsider, you would not call this competitive. The interest in the Prairie Football Conference in terms of media and everything is not big. And I'm rambling a little bit, guys. I apologize. This was kind of a last minute decision to do these videos. When the CIS changed their rules, we didn't react, and that changed a little bit on how we operate, you know, with the competing with the CIS. My hope is that as a 20 and under league, the biggest thing for the PFC, it's going to push players out of the nest a little bit earlier. We know that in Saskatoon, players for the most part play 5 years. They're happy to sit on the bench and graduate into the program. As a 20 and under league, we would push players out of the nest a little bit easier and level the playing field. I hate to bring one team down to make the league work. And that, I'm a businessman, and that is so not like me. But the reality of the situation is, the model, we are never going to catch up to the Hilltops. We're not, and we're kidding ourselves if we do. When you look at the infrastructure and the grassroots football, the Hilltops do amazing things with the cards they've been dealt. But the deck of cards is pretty stacked as well. I think we'd have less conflict with the CIS schools in the prairies as much as anywhere else. And now I'm going to ask you to really consider, and the committee that I'm hoping to form will consider this. It may not be as big a deal in the prairies in terms of competing with the CIS schools and the lack of credibility in the high schools to get players. It may not be as big a deal in the PFC as it is in Ontario, but it is a big deal in Ontario. They have far more universities. Their reputation among the high schools there is non-existent. Coaches, for the most part, in high school tell their kids, do not play university, do not play junior. And if we lose the OFC, and I'm a BC guy, but if we lose the OFC, we become a Western Canadian Football League again, and that's not healthy. That's not good for your brand. It's not good for your marketing. And I would suggest, I know nothing about your lottery revenue with your CFL teams and how secure it is, but is it at risk if you become a Western Canada League? I don't know. Wouldn't help it. And would your lottery revenue be even a little bit safer if you were a Canadian league operating as a 20 and under rather than some people call us a semi-men's league? So there's my thoughts on that. To the Saskatoon Hilltops. And I'm in actually Saskatoon right now, babysitting our grandchildren. I met with Sarge on the weekend. He was good enough to give me a lot of his time. This puts a target on your back, folks, and I get it. And if you slam the door on my face, I totally get it. But I'm asking the Hilltops, and I said this to Sarge, the biggest problem the Hilltops have is their brand identity takes a beating because of the fact that they roll through everybody. When they lost the Regina Rams as their biggest rival in '98, I know it put a dent in the side of their car. I don't know where I came up with that analogy, but that's what it did. And they've never recovered from it. Losing the Rams hurt. You've got the Thunder, but it is about perception. And your perception in terms of how you roll through everybody takes a hit. We know that there's not as much interest in the Saskatoon Hilltops as there could be. You're doing everything you can possibly do, but when the average fan in Saskatoon is starting to look down at your competitors, there's not a damn thing you can do about it. My hope is that as a 20 and under league, because it pushes players out of the nest a little sooner, that in the long run, another team springs up in Saskatchewan. Maybe another team springs up in Alberta. My hope is that it makes the Prairie Football Conference more competitive for just the reasons I said, by adding potentially a couple teams. Long run, it's not going to happen overnight, but logically, let's say in Saskatchewan, if players at 20 are graduating, they're not going to be willing to sit on the pine and wait to play at 21, 22. In the long run, another team might pop up. And how is that a bad thing for getting kids playing football? In Ontario, it may or may not add more teams, but my goal there, just for comparison's sake, is that it will create less conflict with the universities, even more so than in the prairies, and that the universities will start working more with the junior teams, because their issues are a little bit different than the prairies are. In BC, because there's 48 high schools for the 6 teams there, they're having to recruit on the prairies in Ontario. The biggest issue for the BC teams is that the most demanding, most expensive players are the 21 and 22s. The younger kids are just happy to be there. We're going to get more kids playing in Saskatchewan, more kids playing in Alberta and Winnipeg. And then the issues in Ontario and BC will, over time, fix themselves with the help of everybody involved as well. So again, guys and gals, I'm asking in the prairies to take the blinders off a little bit, and realize that you're at risk of losing the OFC. And if you're at the AGM in November, you didn't hear a lot of positive stuff coming out of that conference. When I present this concept to the OFC teams, I from talking to a couple teams in November at the AGM in Saskatoon, I didn't get a lot of positive response. But then when I said, guys, it's not working at 22, you're getting your ass kicked, you're going to be gone in 5 years. 2 of the teams told me, probably less than that. We have to do something. We've been on this treadmill going nowhere for 30 years. You go back, look at the document. It's pretty clear we're not healthy. We need more teams and we need more competitiveness. We're shrinking. So again, I'm looking for. So at the end of the video, I'm going to say it again. I'm looking for a committee. Thank you, Jordy in Winnipeg. He doesn't necessarily see the merit in this, but he's at least willing. He heard me out a couple weeks ago and is willing to be part of it. Sarge is willing to be part of it, and just to look at our problem and see if there's some merit to this. 2 things that I've heard from coaches mainly that are negative about this concept. One is it's not fair to the 21 and 22s. What about them? That's true. The 21 and 22s wouldn't exist. But if our league goes down, nobody's playing. How fair is it how fair is it that 23 or 24-year-old can't play? How fair is it that an 18-year-old has to compete against a 22-year-old? Life's not fair. We owe our kids the best experience that we can. And while individual teams may be giving their players the best experience within the framework of their organization, overall as a league, we're failing miserably. This is not a league that works for the kids when 97% of them at the start of the year have no chance to compete and are playing on a team that's at risk. As far as there not being enough 20 and unders, I think we would get more of them playing in our league. My thought is that a junior coach would be able to recruit better against the CIS coach for those 19-year-olds. Other than a blue chip player that is going to stand out at CIS, or a true university student who should go to school, our coaches, you guys, would be able to get those players to play junior, because the argument is, hey guys, you're going to play for us. You're going to redshirt or just be a tackling dummy for the CIS. You're going to compete for a playing spot with us. You can get on the field and you're going to develop for CIS. I have heard, by the way, couple CIS coaches that I've talked to, they kind of turn their noses up a little bit because they consider us easy out for university players to flunk out. to go play junior. And I know CIS coaches have their own agenda, don't get me wrong, but there's some merit to that. We do know some kids have flunked out that maybe would have made a better effort to stay in school. And if they do flunk out, playing junior isn't necessarily what's needed to get back to school again. You can be training and everything else and get back into school. And one other thing I want to mention, I've been around our team for my previous team, Okanagan Sun, for many years. I don't think I'm alone when I say that I know several of our players that stayed in junior far longer than they would have, and would have left at 20 and gone to school and got on with their lives a little bit sooner if junior wasn't there. They got a little lazy playing junior, in my opinion, and I know who they are, and some of them would admit it, and I'm sure every other team has the same. Can look back and go, yeah, we've had kids like that. Are we doing what's best for our kids by keeping them in junior? One mom said to me, who's an educator, she said, when you go back to school at 23 years old, for a young man that's been out since he was 18, it's a lot harder to get those wheels turning scholastically. So maybe we should look at the big picture. Now, a couple things. I know that I have some detractors in the PFC. I have some people that agree with me or like me. I have some people that can't stand me, and I get it. I'm very opinionated, and I want to address a couple things. 3 years ago at the AGM in West Shore, I stood up and I asked the deputy commissioner at that time to not let his name stand, and it would have. If my conference had followed the plan a little bit better and stood up the way they're supposed to, the ball was dropped. But believe me, I had 100% support from our conference. I had one Prairie team willing to stand up, wanting to stand up as long as we did, and the UFC was going to stand up as well. The reason I asked for his resignation, the night before the meeting at their hospitality suite, Corey Philpott, one of our directors, said to our deputy commissioner, he said, hey, you know what, a lot of our teams in our conference aren't feeling really good about playing in the CJFL anymore. They're casually talking about pulling out and just playing provincially. If I was the deputy commissioner, or if most of us were the deputy commissioner, and no, I'm not lobbying to be involved with the CJFL, I'm quite happy where I am, but my point is, the deputy commissioner at that point in my mind should have said, whoa, we've got a problem. We got to sit down with your teams. We've got some disconnect. We got to fix this. The deputy commissioner's response to Corey was, too bad, go. You'll be begging your way back in 2 years and you'll pay more to get in. That was dangerous. That is not the type of person we wanted in that chair. There was other examples of that, but that was very glaring to me, and he was not fit for the chair, and fortunately he worked his way out of it last year for other reasons. Then this past November, Blake was at it again. I said some things about a member from the OFC and questioned his abilities. And here's why. My white paper, I sent it to our commissioner 2 or 3 weeks before the AGM, asked to discuss it. He said we would, asked, and then when it was brought up at the AGM, I was never called back by anybody from the CJFL. And if you look at that document, you can see this wasn't done over a cup of coffee. There was hours of research put into it. When it was brought up at the AGM, they introduced a member from the Ontario Football Conference to discuss it, to present it. They asked a member of the Ontario Football Conference to discuss a paper somebody in BC wrote. I'm sorry, that is about as ridiculous and as disrespectful and poor way of doing business as I didn't know what to say. It's laughable. And then within 3 minutes of presenting the document, of which this guy didn't even believe in, he asked for a show of hands on who wants to go 20 and under. When anybody I talked to, I said, this was not something I'm asking for a vote on. I could be dead wrong that this is the way to go. But I'm trying to get a focus group across the country to look at it. So yeah, I took some offense to that. And then further, this person then said he said he'd like to form a he'd like to head a competition committee. Well, this guy was in Victoria on the league's dime. I don't know how much it cost. I asked at the meeting, and I was told it's none of my business. To me, it is my money. It's everybody's money, and I don't know why that question wasn't answered. But this person from Ontario was in Victoria at a football game last year as a regional rep, seeing how the West Shore Rebels operate. Yet he didn't talk. He talked to the president of the Rebels for about 3 minutes, and he never talked to the marketing person. I don't know what kind of a trip that was, and to me, you can do stuff with conference calls that, anyway, it's laughable. It's not good use of money. It's a perk. Out in BC, our president, myself, the vice president, Tyler McClellan, the president, we've trimmed our budget. Our executive travel is minuscule because we pay our own way to pretty much everything except the Canadian Bowl. And we certainly wouldn't travel across the country to see what another team is doing. He did say, by the way, when he shot me an email afterwards, he said one of the things he did is he delivered the Canadian Bowl to Saskatchewan, or where he brought the Canadian Bowl somewhere. I'd have FedExed it myself rather than driving across the country with it. Anyway, so that's just defending myself. I'm passionate about the CGFL. I'm passionate about the OFC. We need the OFC to survive. I'm passionate about the prairie teams. Our model is broken. We can put our heads in the sand and think that things are fine. They're not. Last thing, I've had some coaches, a few people say, if we lose our 21 and 22-year-olds, our product's not going to be as good. And there's some absolute merit to that. Sure, we get younger. Absolutely. I guess that's true to a point. But you look at our interconference games and our national championships, how many of them are good? They're not. 8 out of 10 are lopsided. That's not doing anything good for our branding. And the argument that a younger league wouldn't be exciting, picture if high school in Canada had a national championship. Think about how good a game of the two best high schools in Canada playing each other would be. It would be awesome. You would watch it, and you'd probably be watching it on TSN because it would get that kind of visibility. We can do that. We have the ability to be an amazing league, high profile. We have the ability to do far better things in terms of fan interest than CIS does. Far better. We have two options. We can get younger and leaner and more effective as a 20 and under developmental league, or we can blow it up. Sure, we could go 22 and over, or 22, stay where we are and spend loads of money to compete with the CIS. That ain't going to happen. We don't have the budget for that. This will work. Anyway, I'm looking for people from, I've got at least 2 people in BC. Sarge in Saskatoon is willing to work with us to see what the merit is. And thank you, Sarge. Thanks for listening. For obvious reasons. Jordy in Winnipeg, an old friend. Thank you. I know you're not necessarily seeing the merit in this, but thank you for at least willing to listen more and do some groundwork. Mike Morency in Windsor. But I'm going to be reaching out to you guys. If anybody else would like to be involved, has questions, I would love to discuss this more. Phone number is 250-212-2888, 250-212-2888. Email Blake at 97wayhome. Let's talk football and let's fix what's going on. Thanks for watching.